Lesson 6, I will use a protractor to determine angle measure. So today we're going to be using a protractor for the first time, and we're going to be measuring some angles. We're not going to use our math journal, but you are going to need to come and see me so I can show you where a protractor is. And we're going to begin with your practice sheet that is in your math binder. Okay, so let's take a look here at your practice sheet. And you're also going to need to get that protractor that I told you about. And I'm going to get out my protractor here. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice about this protractor is that it is transparent so that you can see through it. And there is certainly a certain way that you have to line up a protractor, and students line up protractors incorrectly all the time. Okay? Now, so let's take a look here. You're going to notice that this protractor has a circle in it, just like yours. This circle is where you're going to put the vertex of the angle that you're measuring. So here's our vertex. Remember, the vertex is where the two rays meet, and you're going to put that vertex right in the circle. You're also going to see that this line on your protractor must line up with the line on this angle. If it's crooked, it's going to change the angle measure. So take a look at what would happen if I did this. If my protractor wasn't right, you can see that the numbers definitely change. So if it's tilted just a little bit, it's going to change the angle measure. It has to be right on this 0 line. Okay, now you're going to notice that this is 0, 180, and then this angle opens, and you're going to see 120 and the number 60. So what we've learned so far about angles is that this angle is less than a right angle. And if right angles measure 90 degrees, is this angle going to be 120 degrees or is it going to be 60 degrees? It would have to be 60 degrees, right? In order to be 120 degrees, it would have to be obtuse. So let's go ahead and write. Okay, and let's try to measure angle D. All right, so let's move our protractor. I want you to try to line yours up first, and then I'll line mine up, and we'll see if we have the same measurement. Okay, so I'm putting this on the vertex, and I'm putting this right on 0. So you'll notice that it's between 120, 130, and it's between 50 and 60. So between 120 and 130 would be 125, right? And this little mark means degrees. Between 50 and 60 would be 55 degrees. So I have to look at this angle and determine, is it 125 degrees or is it 55 degrees? One of these is for an obtuse angle, and one of these is for an acute angle. Now this angle is less than a right angle, so that means that it would be 55 degrees. All right, let's take a look at this one. Okay, so I have the circle on the vertex, and I have the base of my angle sitting right here on the line. And when I look, the other line or the other ray is right on 50 degrees and right on 130 degrees. So I have to decide, is this angle 50 degrees or is it 130 degrees? So one of these measurements is for an acute angle and one of them is for an obtuse angle. Now when I look at the angle, it's greater than a right angle. So that means that it is 130 degrees. Okay, go ahead and get out your problem set. Looks like this, lesson 6 problem set. And you're still going to need your protractor. You'll notice the directions just say use a protractor to measure the angles and then record the measurements in degrees. The first thing you're going to notice here is that these angles are much smaller. So this is going to make measuring them just a little bit more difficult, because look at what happens whenever I put my protractor on here. You'll notice that this ray does not extend all the way. So it's hard to tell what the measurement is. What I have done in the past so that I would have an angle or a ray that was long enough is you can take your protractor and you can use the edge of your protractor as a straight edge like this. So I'm going to kind of tilt it like this. And then you can take your pencil and you can extend this ray so that it's easier to read. So you take your pencil and run up along this, just like I'm going to do with this edge here, and you extend this ray. Now look what happens. Now you can take your protractor and turn it back, and it'll be a lot easier to be able to tell what the measurement is. Okay, so now that I've done this, I can see that this angle comes between 30 and 40. Make sure I have that straight. Yes, that's right. Okay, so it comes between 30 and 40 and between 140 and 150. So it's either 35 degrees or it is 145 degrees. Now looking at this angle, which one do you think that it would be? Since it's acute, it has to be 35 degrees. I want you to try to measure this angle all by yourself and then come back and see if we get the same thing. All right, so I'm going to take my protractor. I'm going to put it on my angle, and you're going to see that, again, it's kind of hard to see, but I think I can see this one without drawing it. But you can see that it comes between, I need to move this down a little bit, it comes between 30 and 35 and between 140 and 150. So this one's just like the last one that we had. So it's either going to be 35 degrees or it's going to be 145 degrees. So when I look at this angle, is it acute or is it obtuse? Well, it's acute, just like the last angle, so this angle is also 35 degrees, even though it's opening the opposite direction. Okay, so let's take a look at angle C. By looking at this angle, it appears to be a right angle. So go ahead and put your protractor on there, and let's test it and see if it is a right angle. All right, so let's put our protractor on here. And it looks like it is exactly 90 degrees. So let's go ahead and write 90 degrees. That does say 90, by the way, even though, let's try that again. Okay, all right, let's take a look at D. Go ahead and try to line up D. Now you'll notice if you don't turn your protractor, you cannot measure your angle like this. You have to rotate your protractor so that it is sitting on the base of your angle. My protractor doesn't want to. Okay, so now that I have my protractor in the proper position, it appears that this angle is exactly 90 degrees too. So let's label that one 90 degrees. All right, let's take a look at the next set of angles. I want you to try to measure both of these angles by yourself, and then I want you to come back and I want you to compare your answers to my answers, and let's see if you're using your protractor correctly. If you have it wrong, you can always just change it. Okay, so with this angle, you're going to see again that this angle is turned sideways. So you have to rotate your protractor sideways so that it's lined up with the vertex and it's also lined up with the base of the angle. So when I do this, I'm looking at my angle and it's a little hard to see if it's either, I can't tell if it's between 30 and 40 or if it's closer to 40. So I'm going to go ahead and extend this ray like this. You can do this with using your protractor as a straight edge. Now when I look at this, it doesn't appear to be right on the 5 mark. It actually looks to be closer to 36. It's okay if you're a few degrees off, but it looks to be closer to 36 degrees. If you said that it was like 145 degrees, you forgot that this was an acute angle. So make sure you ask yourself, is it acute or is it obtuse? All right, let's take a look at this one. Now, just by looking at this angle before I even measure it, I can see that it's already obtuse. So that means that it has to be greater than 90 degrees. So when I'm looking, again, it's kind of hard for me to see what the measurement is because the ray is so short. So I'm going to extend this ray straight out, and it is, if you want to be exact, it is between 150 and 160, but it's not exactly 155. It's actually 156 degrees. If you said 155 degrees, then that would be close enough. If you said 24 degrees, you were measuring this like it was an acute angle, but remember, it is actually obtuse because it's greater than a right angle. All right, let's look at the last two here. Again, I want you to try to measure these by yourself. Pause the video, and then come back and check with me. Again, if you got it wrong, that's okay. You're still learning. You just change it and fix your mistake. All right, so let's take a look at G. And I'm putting it right on the base. The most important part of measuring with a protractor is lining it up correctly. 9 times out of 10, that's what the kid's mistake is. Okay, so now when I look at the other ray, it's kind of hard for me to read it again. So I'm going to go ahead and extend it straight out so that I can see. Now remember, you can do this by using your protractor as a straight edge and by tracing it with your pencil. Okay, that's a little bit crooked. I'm going to go ahead and just move that one out of the way. Okay, so it is between 20 and 25, or it is between 150 and 160. It's kind of hard to tell if this was, okay, it was obtuse. All right, so because it was obtuse, then this is going to be 155 degrees. Now, looking at this angle, it looks like it's a right angle, but I'm going to measure just to make sure. So I'm going to put my protractor on here. I'm going to have to move this paper down a little bit. All right, so I'm going to rotate my protractor so that it is on the base. Yes, it is exactly 90 degrees. So this is a right angle. Okay, so let's get our protractor out. Okay, again, I want you to try to practice to measure these two by yourself and see what you get, and then come back and compare with what my answers are. Okay, so angle I here is exactly 90 degrees. And J is obtuse, so I know that whatever my measurement is, it has to be greater than 90 degrees. Now, this is too short for me to try to guess, so I'm going to go ahead and extend this ray. Okay. All right, now I think this is just a little bit off. I'm going to move it down just a little bit so it lines up. Okay. Now, it looks like it is somewhere between, oh, it's right on the line, I think. All right, so we have 30 degrees here, but it's not 30 because it's obtuse, so I have 150 degrees. So this is either 150, 151 degrees. It's kind of hard to tell. I'm going to go ahead and say 151 degrees. As long as you're within a couple of degrees, that's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so we've got 150 degrees. Okay, so this is 150 degrees. Okay, again, you are just learning to use a protractor. It takes a little bit of practice, so be kind to yourself, and remember that after you've been using it for a little bit, it'll be a lot easier, but it's going to take some practice.